All right, so let's get into this. My name is Alexander Bimal. I'm a person who loves nature. I'm very passionate about it. My degree is in zoology, and that's my bachelor's, and also to have an education degree as well. And my master's is in environmental biotechnology. Now that qualifies me to teach environmental science. I've been the head of department for environmental management in a previous school. I've been teaching environmental management for the last 14 years. I also teach geography, a bit of previous experience with biology. So I'm very passionate about all these subjects. Okay, they are closely related. You have environmental science, a bit of biology in that, a lot of geography in that, so these are subjects that I'm very passionate about and I love teaching them. And I hope you will also feel inspired, because many of my students do tell me that they are inspired to continue this as a profession, to take it up as a subject that they would love to study in the future, maybe a career as well. Some are really, really passionate about it. So as a teacher, that is something that I really enjoy, passing on that energy and enthusiasm for the subject, for the love for the subject, and it's enjoyable when you love something, isn't it? So I hope I will be able to pass on that same feeling to all of you. Again, I know that you are all from different backgrounds and you may have different aspirations for the future. Maybe this is just another extra subject that you're taking. Whatever it is, I hope you will still enjoy it in the whole process and you will come out with A stars. That's obviously what we want, isn't it? We want your scores to be the best. So I am a Google certified educator, Ministry of Education licensed for biology in the UAE. So here we have a subject which is interdisciplinary, which means if you study environmental science, it's going to help you in biology as well. Because I have a lot of my students who come back and tell me, sir, what you taught me in environmental science, we had the similar kind of questions in biology. Because the last chapter in biology is the same, ecology. So a lot of these topics overlap. There's also a lot of these overlap in geography as well. Okay, so if you take that subject, this will help you, sort of supplement that. Okay, so we are going to be looking at different ways of dealing with the environment, how environmental issues and how to manage them. That is the most important thing about it. It's not just to learn that, oh, these are the problems, but what is the solution for each and every problem that we have? So that's what we're looking at. These are the 3 recommended textbooks. And I personally prefer the first one. So here we have 3 books that are all equally good, but I would recommend the first one, the Cambridge one. I like it because it's nice layout and nice pictures and good textbook. So I recommend that. Quality is good. Okay, the book quality itself is good. This one, I will be using information from all of them. I will be using pictures and illustrations and all from them while I teach. So it'll be nice if you go with the first book, if you buy it, but it's not necessary that you buy the textbook. It's not like 100% that you have to buy one. These are the 9 chapters that we have to cover. Okay, so with this subject, I have to say it is pretty lengthy in the sense that the content is long. It's interesting, it's enjoyable, but there is a lot of content. And if you've studied biology or other subjects in IGCSE, you will know that there's a lot of topics to go through, isn't it? 9 chapters seems okay, but then as you go through the document, it's quite a bit. So these 9 chapters will have content that is, we'll be going through each unit. This is just a sample of how it looks like in the syllabus document. This is the first chapter, Rocks and Minerals and the Exploitation. And I think I will take you through a little bit of that today. Okay. So describe and interpret the rock cycle, state and explain the formation and characteristics of named igneous, sedimentary and metamorphic rocks. So you need to know these rocks. You need to be able to describe them, explain them in detail, stuff like that. And these are the examples. So further guidance and exemplification is basically, these are the examples of igneous rocks that you need to be aware about. There are many igneous rocks, right? You can't be learning all of it. So granite and basalt, you've got to learn that. Sedimentary, you've got limestone, sandstone and shale. Metamorphic, you got marble and slate. So you got to know these examples and you need to know how is it formed, formation, state and explain the formation and the characteristics, which means how does it look like and what is a special thing about this rock, so that's a little bit of geology, not geography, that's geology. All right. So, and this is something that you might have learned it in science, rocks and rock cycle. So that's not something, something very new. And the next unit, once we learn about the rocks, we need to learn how to extract them. The process is called mining. So you might have learned about mining again in science, but maybe in a very shallow way. Mining is just digging out minerals and probably that's it. But here we're going to go into a bit more detail. Okay, so we're going to learn about the two types of mining, describe the following methods of extraction: surface mining and subsurface mining, which is underground mining. And then discuss the factors. So when you do that, surface mining, if you look at the side over here, it says open cast, open pit, open cut, strip mining. These are the different kinds of surface mining. Basically, they are the similar one, slight differences. Subsurface mining or underground mining, you've got deep mining and shaft mining. Okay, deep shaft mining, that's another way to call it. It's almost similar, but whatever the differences and slight changes and all, I will explain through that. And then discuss the factors that affect the decision to extract rocks and minerals. So if you want to take rocks and minerals from the earth, what factors decide that? Why would you do mining? There we have exploration, geology, accessibility. We will go one by one over those. Okay, so we'll learn those details as well. Similarly, through the 9 chapters. So the content is extensive. So don't feel like, oh, it's too easy. Well, I will say it is easy, but you've got to do your bit of study as well. And in IGCSE, you've got these kind of questioning being used, terms used, for example, state something or suggest or describe or explain or, give, determine, calculate. You have calculation, unfortunately. So all those kind of things, you got to know what it means, right? How would you answer those kind of questions? I will be training you on that. This is from the syllabus document. You've got some questions which are mathematical, so you got to have basic math, even though you feel like, oh, wow, that's a lot of math. No, it's not. It's simple math. So if you've been learning maths, and I'm sure all of you learn math, so this is going to be child's play. Gathering of data. Here we are looking at, a lot of data, environmental data. What does that mean? Well, you're measuring something, let's say you're doing a study, you're a scientist. Okay, so you're doing a study about the growth of a plant. So if you're looking at a plant growth, you've got to look at the height of the plant, maybe the quantity of fruit that it produces and things like that, right? So you've got to be able to use the scientific method of learning new things or doing research, That's amazing, right? I'm going to teach you how to do research. Yeah. So these are the basic stuff that you need to know, what are the aims of a study? How do you set a hypothesis? How do you design questionnaires? When you go to KFC, you have this, handout, a form that they give you and they say, hey, rate your experience. Did the customer service, was it really good? Did you enjoy the food or whatever, or any suggestions? Well, we've got to be able to design a questionnaire. So I'll teach you how to do that. Questionnaires are required when you have to ask questions to some people. For example, you are doing a study with people. You can't go and measure their height and all that, right? So what do? You ask them their height. So what's your height? So, and then you have these options that you give with, boxes to tick. There's a way to do the questionnaire. So we will be doing that. Also designing simple experiments. So for example, you're doing an experiment about the growth of plants. So you got one pot and you've got the plants in there and you're trying to grow it and you're measuring the height and everything. But without a comparison, how would you do that? You need to compare it with something, isn't it? You're trying to see whether you provided this much quantity of water. Is that good or should I put more water? Let's say. So what do? You grow a plant, another pot with a particular quantity of water. And in this one, your experimental setup, you're adding more water. So you sort of have comparison. This is called controls, suitable controls. Again, in science, you might have learned this. Understand and evaluate random and systematic sampling techniques. Samples. How do you take a sample? You make a soup or, something like that, biryani or something, and you want to taste how it is. So you don't take the whole thing and eat it. You take a sample, right? Take a spoonful. And so when you're collecting data from the environment, you got to do similar things. So you learn how to do systematic and random sampling. So then we have presenting the data. So you collect all the information, collect the data, and then how do you present it? It has to be presentable. Just a set of numbers won't make sense. So how do you present it? Usually you got to put it into a table. Well, that's actually a skill, it's so useful when you're even in, when I'm doing something, I want to, plan something out. I draw tables because it's so easy to, arrange things and make sense. So learning how to do a proper table, rows, columns, how do you, so they'll give you a situation and they'll say, design a table, 3 marks or 4 marks, So you got to do that. So we will learn how to do it. Graphs, different kinds of graphs. I'm not telling you bar graph, line graph, pie graph, scatter graph, all these different graphs we will go through. Okay. And so you got this data, you're presenting numerical results as different graphs, and we will do samples of questions. By the way, lots of graphs in IGCSE EM. So that's good in a way, because if you know how to do it, you're going to score really well. Easy to, get the marks there. All right. So then you need to know basic expected knowledge, all the continents and oceans. Have your teacher taught you this in school? If not, I'll have to teach you again. All right. So then you have case studies. For every chapter, there is a case study. Even though case studies are being introduced in this new syllabus, which started in 2019, the updated syllabus. The original syllabus is from like 2004 onwards. I've been teaching in the same syllabus from 2006. Now in 2019, they have updated it. So the updated syllabus, you're having case studies. Now case studies, I haven't seen any particular direct questions from case studies, but I definitely would encourage you to read it, understand it, because a case study is like a real example of a particular problem that we've been learning. Like, how does that theory apply in real life? So if you're learning about, let's say, study the causes, impact, and management of a specific example of, let's say, air pollution. Is that it? Atmospheric pollution. Yeah. So we've learned something about photochemical smog. Now, smog is something that is very common in New Delhi, India. So that is a case study that we can talk about. It's also common in Los Angeles, USA. So we'll be talking about that as a case study. So it helps you to sort of relate in the real world, but otherwise it's not a big issue with the exam point of view. All right. So there are two papers, paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 is basically the theory part. Paper 2 is also a lot of theory, but then you also have a lot of that experiment, questionnaire, table, all that thing that I told you will come in paper 2. So paper 1 theory is direct structured questions, direct questions. They're asking you, what is this, explain this, what strategies, all of that. So it's kind of easy kind of questions. That's 1 hour, 45 minutes, which is 50% of your marks. It's 80 marks. So total 160, half of it comes from paper 1, direct questions. Paper 2, you've got a combination of direct questions and also information related to a particular country. So it's like a case study. They will, all questions that you learned in theory, for example, you've learned about farming, or you've learned about soil erosion, or you've learned about deforestation. They will put all these different aspects into one country. Let's say Egypt. So it'll give you a map of Egypt, and then they will tell you some information about Egypt. You don't need to know anything about the country, but the information, the paper will give you all that you need to know. But then you apply what you've learned in that context. That's why it said management in context. So it's very unfamiliar situations, This is why when I teach, I will always be going through a lot of pictures and videos and things like that, so that you understand the real world, not just in a theory way. You need to be able to relate it with the real world, and that is so important. If I just teach you like theory based, and it's just, you're not going to do very well in paper 2. So I totally encourage you to take my information that I give you in a very positive way, because everything that I show you is related to something in the question papers from past years. So, with all the experience that I have, I'll be teaching you in that way. So there will be management in context. Again, that's equal weightage. So a lot of students do find paper 2 a little bit more difficult than paper 1, because paper 2 is a little higher level question. Not all, some. Okay. Now I would say for all subjects, about 20% of your question paper is for A-star students. It is meant for A-star students, and I believe that all of you who are here are A-star students. If you're not, you should get there, so you should crack even that difficult question. Okay, that's what we need to do, and not miss on the silly one. That's another thing that I notice. A lot of students make silly mistakes due to, not being careful enough, careless mistakes. Oh, you should never make those. So there is a way of, I will train you, the way of thinking, like when you get a question, how do you think about the question and how do you proceed with it? So we will do the practice for that. Like see how the weightage goes. Look at the lower part. You can see 40% and 40% of knowledge and understanding, which means direct questions. Information handling and analysis, they will give you some information in the question paper. You got to know how use it, in a graph, maybe in a higher level question, thinking question, So that is, more in paper 1, a little bit higher. But investigation skills, experiment and all those kind of things is a little bit more in paper 2. So that's how it is all divided. Anyway, you don't need to worry about it. All IGCSE courses, Cambridge courses, as I know, is about 130 hours of teaching. 130 hours of guided learning, that's what they call it. But we will be doing it in a little shorter time, but you really need that time. You really need that time to actually study the topics and do the past papers and, you know, go through all of that. And this is the recommended teaching time, but there is actually no particular order. You can start with any chapter. You can learn with any chapter. They are all complementary in the sense that, you know, once you learn one chapter, there is a connection somewhere else. But that doesn't mean that, you know, you can't study one before the other. You know, as I teach you, you will see the connections. You will learn how it connects together. So it's kind of, anyway, we will have practice on past paper questions. Okay, I'll show you. Well, let me do that right away. So this is a workbook for chapter 1 and 2. Okay. What I've done is to put everything organized in the same way, chapter wise. So you've got all the different topics and the syllabus matrix, how it goes. Okay. And then some objectives, same details that you need. All that information, I put it into this one. So it's useful. Then the chapter 1, rocks and minerals and exploitation. Here we go straight into the chapter. Bear with me. Let me just, my computer is taking a little time. Okay, there you go. All right, so here we have unit 1.1, formation of rocks. So this is the objective and this is what you should get by the end of the lesson. You should be able to, you know, learn that. Again, there are notes which you can study from about the igneous rocks. There are details, there are pictures, there are tables. These kind of information will help you to sort of, you know, after this lesson, you can go back and read from here and study from here. The textbook is definitely useful. Well, you've got the whole study material here and then the questions. So these are the IG questions. For example, state the meaning of the terms igneous rocks, metamorphic rocks. Now there is a missing rock here. You've got to put the name and see, these are the missing pieces. So you've got to put that. You've got fill in the blanks, but those are very rare questions. It's not very common. Then you have further simple questions. Then you've got long answers as well. Okay. Anyway, this is the rock cycle. So I've got some study material. I'm just showing it to you so that you have an idea about it. So here we go again. So studying the material and then solving the paper, you know, with all these questions is the best way to go. Once you're done with this, and I recommend that you just do this immediately after the lesson, you know, or within a day's time, you know, you completely study the topic and then you solve the question on your own because your English has to develop. IGCSE, I've noticed one thing. If you want to get an A star, writing good English matters. Please don't think, well, they don't, you know, cut marks for spelling mistakes or grammatical mistakes in EM. In English, that's a different thing because it's a language subject, so you got to write. But language matters because I've noticed that as a teacher myself, when I'm looking through an answer and I can read it and understand it very well, it's simple English, you know, it's proper formal language, you know, formal way of writing. Answer is very clear, very straightforward. I feel like I want to give full marks because, oh, this person is an A-star student. That impression, you've got to create that impression. Your paper is going to go to the UK and somebody's going to sit there and, you know, read your answer on the screen or whatever, you know, so they should be able to understand you. So write it as if you're going to teach that other person, you know, don't think that, oh, that person knows everything. So I'm just going to write only the frame, you know, framework. No, you've got to write proper answers. Okay, full sentences and details and all that. That's what makes an A-star. And I've noticed students who have good English, if they know the content, I can 100% give you assurance that you will get an A-star. Okay, just by looking at your writing, I can tell you. And you have to study, of course. But it's actually very easy to get an A-star if your language is good and your subject knowledge is good. Now, let's say your subject knowledge is good, but you're struggling with language. It could drop to an A. Okay, I'm just telling you the honest fact. So I would definitely recommend that now itself you take English really important. Okay, many of you may be studying in English, but then you don't read a lot, you don't write a lot in English, right? I mean, it's kind of boring to do that. So, but you've got to change that. Okay, I would recommend that you start reading the newspaper, start writing things down, you know, in proper sentences, that kind of practice. Well, if nothing works, just do it in the workbook. Okay, at least answer all the questions in the workbook because you've got plenty. You've got plenty of questions coming up. So solve the questions in a proper way, and that is the way to go. So along with this, these marking schemes, I'll give you that separate also. I'm not going to give it to you with this one, But the same questions, what page number, what is the marking scheme answer, that will also be classified and sent to you also. Okay, so you have the questions and you can solve it and just check yourself. But don't look at the marking scheme first. You got to do this first. Again, marking schemes are a guideline to the teachers to mark you. Don't think that if you write your answer exactly like the marking scheme, word for word in the mark, that's not what the teachers are going to look for, because they want quality answers. Okay, some teachers may tell you just write whatever is in the marking scheme. You may get marks, I don't know, because the keywords are there. But the point is the keywords should be there, but written in a proper way, because the question says describe. You've got to describe it, isn't it? Just outlining things may not be nice. Explain something. You've got to give reasons to support it. So, writing in a proper way is really important. Unit 1.2, here you've got the methods of mining and so on. I've put in my own, answers as well. So here we have the different methods of mining and using the diagram, describe the process of open pit mining. How easy is it? Like the picture has all the information, but you got to know what it is. Like right now, if I ask you to do it, you'll be like, oh, what do you. But once you finish with the learning process, this becomes child's play. All you need is English, so it becomes so easy to actually answer them. Name the type of mining shown. It's called open pit mining. Describe the methods. Yeah, we've got the methods over here. 4 steps, write them into sentences, and you got the 3 marks. Describe how a mineral is extracted. Again, it's the same thing asked in a different way. See, the wordings are different, but the answers are similar. So you got to know how to use the question paper to your advantage. Anyway, these are some notes, and then on to the next part. How do you dig coal? This is underground mining, so that kind of details. Okay, so this is one part. This is the workbook or the classified notes, or whatever you call it. You got the questions and the notes together. I feel like this is really helpful, and so my students have told me. Once I teach a topic, simple quiz like that, and I use quizzes for that. I don't know whether you're familiar with quizzes. It's simple, but the thing is, it helps you think, like make connections within your mind, and it's making your learning stronger. So I feel like this is going to be helpful. So after we finish the topic, you could have a short quiz like that, and you just see, and don't worry about, getting a little low score on that. It's just for reinforcing your learning. I would always say, make mistakes. Feel free to make mistakes, but then learn from your mistakes. Go back and find what you made mistake. Otherwise, it's pointless. I feel like learning should be interesting. Everybody has different abilities, and you should enjoy your learning. And that comes from an internal motivation. And at this point, I think I should tell you this. With online learning, most of the time, you will be receiving information. You'll be listening to me. Of course, you can, interact with me. You can even turn on your audio, as long as you're not disturbing others and as long as you're not wasting other people's time. I totally encourage that. Otherwise, I'm available for you to come back to me through WhatsApp and all that. So, I can support you with doubts. If you have any, I can clarify that for you. Anyway, these are the things that I normally use to teach, some of the tools. But anyway, that's my number, and that's the Gmail address that I use. So this is the first topic that we are going to be learning about. I am going to give you a sample of it if you don't mind. But if you want to leave now, that's fine with me, okay? If you feel like that's enough, I understood everything, I'm ready to go, that's fine. But if you want to stay, you can just get a glimpse of, how I teach. So the learning outcomes for this chapter, this is the whole chapter, every detail of the chapter. So we'll just skip it for now. Formation of rocks is the first unit. And obviously this is what the objectives are. You need to know the objectives or the details. Right. So you can see the parts of the earth, right? So you have the inner core, the outer core, the mantle, and the crust. The crust is where we live on. Okay, and right beneath the crust. Now the crust itself is about 100 to 10 kilometers, 10 kilometers to 100 kilometers. Okay, that's how thick it is. Beneath that, you have a much more thicker layer called as a mantle, which is made of magma, melted rock. So the crust is solid rock, whereas this is melted rock. And further details, I'll tell you that later on. And this is one of the recent past paper. You can see it's talking about the crust. Now D that you see over here is this part over here is the oceanic crust. The whole thing is the crust, because D is the crust. Okay. But this part which supports the ocean is called as the oceanic crust. And this is the continental crust. which forms the continent and the land. Yeah, it is part of the old syllabus. See, the new syllabus is just a modification of the old syllabus. They have taken out a lot of this topics, some of the topics from the old syllabus, but they also have added a few new topics. Okay, so it's been reorganized. Yeah, I mean, you got to know these stuff. This is basic knowledge from the old syllabus as well. You're right. And so they're asking you to identify the different features. And then we learn about rocks, the 3 types of rocks. Yeah, so you're looking at the formation of igneous rocks. And here we have rocks which are formed by fire. So they play automatically. So you're calling about primary rocks, which is the first formed rocks. This is high definition videos. That's why it's taking a little time to load. So you can see the lava flowing. And this lava will then cool down to form igneous rock. Okay. Now, when the lava cools outside the earth, you have basalt, which is an extrusive igneous rock. And when it's inside the earth, it's intrusive. It's called granite. Okay, so this is the different ways. We'll learn that in detail later on. And so extrusive igneous rocks, literally you have lava flowing out. And so you can see this will then turn to a thick, hard crust. And then it will start cooling inside. It's forming crystals. And the cooling is a little fast. If you spray water, this cooling will go even faster. You can actually slow down the flow of lava by spraying water. Okay, we'll be learning about volcanic eruption. So in order to cool the lava, you got to spray water. It turns into rock, basalt, which has tiny crystals. So this is how basalt looks like, a very common rock. And when basalt breaks down, right, it breaks into fertile soil. Okay, fertile soil breaks down. Weathering is a process of breaking down of rocks, and it turns into fertile soil. Then basalt, here this is by the cooling of magma outside the earth. And what is the characteristics? Anyway, this won't make much sense right now. Once we start learning it, you will understand how it goes. Now, intrusive is when it's happening deep inside the earth. Okay, the lava is going to cool much more slowly because it's not exposed, and it turns into large crystals called granite. And you can see how that happens. It goes into these gaps and spaces, and it starts to cool off, and turns into granite. So all that gray color that you see is going to be granite. Whereas basalt is after a volcanic eruption, the lava will come out and then turn into basalt. Okay, and these are different ways of forming granite. We will see that later, which is there in the same notes, the dike and the sill and all these kind of things. And this is how granite looks like, big crystals. Right? And they can be of different colors based on what minerals that is there. This is a mine where they cut out granite. It's a very light colored rock. It's got large crystals. So you can almost see those lines and all that, isn't it? That's because of the minerals that are present. It's a large percentage of silica and other minerals. So we'll just keep that for now. And so how is basalt used? And how is granite used? And so we just go through examples of how, because these are all asked in past paper questions. And so next part is sedimentary rocks. Obviously you're tired of this, isn't it? So I think I will stop now because I think I have given you an idea about what the course is going to be like, isn't it? Any questions? The textbook, I would say Cambridge is better. The Oxford book, the content is fine. If you have an Oxford book, that's fine with me, but I would just say Cambridge book is really good quality. You would love the pages. I would recommend you reading the textbook, but the workbook and, you're learning all the content which is already there. But one good reading will be nice. That's a very valid, interesting question also. I teach both, so I know about it. Okay, so EM and geography topics overlap. Not all of it. Some of the topics are totally different. I'll give you a good example for that. Like in geography, you have about rivers. Many of the details about the rivers and how it flows and all of those specific stuff that you learn in geography, you don't have it in EM. Because EM is not focused on about the geography part. We learn about coast, like in general, but in EM. But in geography, you have to learn about the coast, the features of the coastline, how each one will form, different things that you see on the coastal area. That specific detail, you don't have it in EM, but you have it in geography. And even the question pattern is different. Geography past paper, paper is 3 papers. and but they do overlap. For example, the questionnaire, the way experiments are done, those kind of information will be beneficial in the geography paper also. So if you're taking both, it's complementary. Personally, I would recommend that EM is a bit more easier than geography. How long is the class? I personally take 2-hour lessons. That's how I do, but I'll come back to you on that again. Thank you for coming for this, trial lesson. If you have friends that would be interested, do recommend to them. They may not here today. They may not have had a session with me, but if you need a future session, we can arrange that as well. Maybe 1 week or 2 weeks later, if you want a similar session, we can arrange that. But the point is, let others know that they have this, lessons. They may not know about it, right? Thanks a lot for being here, everyone. I know there may be even things that you further want to know, but please get in touch with WeTeach and they will be glad to help you out. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day. Good night.